To prevent his beloved concubine from being subordinate to me, my husband framed me for adultery on our wedding night. He brazenly brought a handsome young servant into our bridal chamber. It is just to tarnish your reputation a little. He won't actually touch you. Afterward, you can request to go to the family temple for spiritual cultivation. I will ensure you retain your position as the main wife. Nonsense. I dislocated his jaw and threw both him and the servant onto the wedding bed. As he stared at me in disbelief, I blinked innocently. Don't worry, husband. It is just a little damage to your reputation. When the wedding guests were led to the bridal chamber, they found my husband, William, and a young male servant entangled on the wedding bed, lost in a world of their own. The first maid to rush in stared in disbelief. It is their wedding night. How could the young mistress be in the bridal chamber with another man? Perhaps it was too shameful to say, but she just pointed a trembling finger at the bridal bed. The room exploded. No way, this young mistress is so shameless. More than shameless, she is rubbing the young master's face in the dirt. Poor, disgusting. They all started yelling, ready to drag me out and drown me in a pig cage, until I, in my red wedding dress, timidly peeked out from behind the door. Everyone, please don't. They all stared at me, as if they had seen a ghost. The most shocked was the maid who had led them in. She blinked, making sure she wasn't seeing things. Young mistress, why are you here? I was clearly terrified by the scene, my voice trembling. My husband told me to guard the door. I was just going to get them some hot water. They then noticed the wooden bucket of hot water in my hand, but that wasn't the point. The point was that William was in the bridal chamber with another woman on his wedding night, and he had made his new wife stand guard. This was beyond scandalous. And then it got worse. From the sounds coming from behind the curtain, they realized he was not with a woman, but a man. Gasps echoed through the room. The young prince preferred men. Were they allowed to see this? Was this a royal secret? They were torn between gawking at the spectacle and pretending they had seen nothing. But one person was the most agitated. "Young master!" she shrieked, her eyes fixed on the shaking bed. She was a woman in her late 20s, her expression arrogant, her figure voluptuous. She was dripping with jewels and dressed in the finest silk. Before I married into the prince's residence, I knew that William had a personal maid, Seraphina, who had served him since childhood. She was 10 years older than him, but they were inseparable. He had wanted to marry her and had defied his mother, the old princess, several times. She had finally forced him to marry the second daughter of the Minister of Revenue by threatening to hang herself. On the day of the wedding, he had made Seraphina his noble concubine and had spent the night in her courtyard, leaving his new wife alone. Seraphina, emboldened by his favor, had been arrogant and had repeatedly provoked her mistress. The noblewoman, unable to bear the humiliation, had her beaten. William, furious, had divorced her for being jealous. For a woman, jealousy was a grave sin. The girl's father, though a minister, could not afford to offend the royal family. To protect the reputation of his other unmarried daughters, he had been forced to cut off his divorced daughter's hair and send her to a nunnery. After that, William had once again proposed to make Seraphina his official wife. His mother, in a fit of rage, had her beaten 30 times, and had threatened to have her beaten to death if he didn't remarry. To save her, he had to give in. His reputation as a man who favored his concubine over his wife had spread throughout the capital. No noble family was willing to marry their daughter to him, and the ones of lower status, his mother looked down on. So, they had settled on me. Because I was known throughout the capital as a complete doormat. Though I was the legitimate daughter of my father's first wife, I was bullied by my 2 younger half-sisters. I had been engaged twice to 2 very eligible young men, but both times, my half-sisters had stolen them away. My third sister was even more cunning. She had not only stolen my fiancé, but also a large portion of the dowry my late mother had left for me. And I, being the spineless creature that I was, had just taken it. My reputation as a pushover was well established. My father was only a 4th-rank official, a respectable but not overly powerful position, and I was a meek, submissive girl. Once I was in the prince's residence, they could do with me as they pleased. I was the perfect scapegoat. William's plan was to marry me, then ruin my reputation on our wedding night, and banish me to a nunnery. That way, he would have a wife in name, to appease his mother, and Serafina would have no one above her. It was a win-win. But he didn't know the whole story. My second sister had managed to marry her prize, but he had died of a heart attack in a brothel a few days later. After infecting her with a venereal disease, she and her unborn child had died soon after. My third sister had used my mother's dowry to marry into a marquise's family, not knowing that they were secret supporters of the former regent. The old marquis had been arrested for treason. The men of the family were executed, and the women were exiled. Everyone said it was karma for their betrayal and their bullying of an honest person. But they didn't know that it was all my doing. My two good fiancés had humiliated me to no end. If it hadn't been for the loyal maid my mother had left to protect me, a woman who had taught me some very useful self-defense skills, I would have been dead long ago. I am a very vengeful person. They wanted to destroy me, so I destroyed their entire families. It is only fair. I just hope my dear husband, William, can last a little longer. It would be so boring otherwise. The spineless me was one thing, but the proud and pampered Serafina was another. She rushed forward to tear down the bed curtains. The moment her fingers touched the fabric, I grabbed her other wrist. "Mother," my husband said, "no one is to disturb them." Seeing me mistake her for the old princess, some of the guests snickered. Serafina was furious. She was used to being the queen of the household and looked down on me. She tried to slap me. I cowered back, and she pulled harder on the curtain. With a rip, it came down, revealing the scene on the bed. The two of them were still at it, completely lost in their passion. The crowd was stunned. A noble on his wedding night, with a man. This was a scandal of epic proportions. The old princess, who had just entered the room, almost fainted. Her son's reputation was ruined. "My mother," I said, looking from Serafina to the old princess, a look of dawning realization on my face. I moved to help her but then hesitated, my hands hovering awkwardly in the air. The old princess just pointed a trembling finger at me, too angry to speak. I was so scared I couldn't even cry, just stood there, wringing my hands. Everyone shook their heads in pity. Any other woman would have already gone back to her family. A more spirited one would have already hanged herself. And me, I was getting them wash water. What a doormat! The old princess, not wanting to faint in front of all these people, finally took a deep breath. "Throw some cold water on them." The two on the bed finally came to their senses. William was dazed, but when he saw Serafina, he started shaking his head. "Serafina, I don't know what happened." She just stared at him, her heart broken, tears streaming down her face. "Serafina, please, it is not what you think," he pleaded. But when he tried to get up, he saw the crowd and fell back onto the bed. Not so long ago, he had been so sure of himself, telling me it would just be a little damage to my reputation. Now that it was his own, he looked like a condemned man. "Hey, husband, I am sorry," I said, trying to hold back a laugh. "It is all my fault. I didn't guard the door properly." He saw me and his face contorted with rage. He lunged at me, his hand raised. "You bitch, this is all your fault." He slapped me so hard I fell to the ground. "Husband, please don't be angry," I sobbed. "It is my fault. But I don't know how all these guests got here." "It was her," I said, pointing to the maid who had led them in. "She is the one who brought them." The maid, who had been acting on his orders, fell to her knees trembling. "I don't know anything, husband," I continued to cry. "If you like this brother, you can just take him into the harem. I won't stand in your way." The crowd looked at me as if I were a ghost. My husband had been caught with a man on our wedding night, and I was trying to get him to take the man as a concubine, but my submissiveness only made him angrier. "It was you venomous woman. You dislocated my jaw and drugged me." "Husband, what are you talking about?" I said, looking at him with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. I am just a weak woman. How could I do such a thing? No one believed him. He was a known philanderer, and now he was trying to blame his wife for his own depravity. If you insist on blaming me, I cried, then let's go to the authorities. If it is my fault, I will kill myself right here in this room. The new magistrate was a man of iron will and integrity. William's little servants would crack under his interrogation in an hour. And the love potion was a forbidden substance from the palace. If it came out that he had been using it to drug his wife on their wedding night, the entire prince's residence would be ruined. He wouldn't dare. Enough, the old princess finally said. She knew her son, Samoan. Take this worthless servant and sell him. She wouldn't let him live to tell the tale. William, seeing his mother take control, didn't object. He just glared at me. Apologize to your wife. She then commanded. Mother, apologize. He finally gritted out. I was wrong. Husband, you are too kind. I cannot accept your apology, I said, wiping my tears. He then saw Serafina, who was crying silently. He forgot everything else and ran after her. Serafina, please, let me explain. The crowd dispersed, and I was left alone, still on the floor. You useless thing. All you know how to do is cry. The old princess hissed at me before leaving. My lady, my maid, Linger, said as she helped me up. You may have saved your reputation, but you have made a powerful enemy. He will not let you go. I know, I said with a small smile. As if he would have let me go if I had just done nothing. If I had been docile, I would be in a nunnery right now, or at the bottom of a river. Because I fought back. I was still alive. So fighting is the only way to survive. The next morning, I went to pay my respects to the old princess, bringing with me the two most valuable items from my dowry, 1,000-year-old wild ginsengs. I presented one to her. She was thrilled but tried to hide it. The prince's residence does not support idlers, she said. If you can't even handle a concubine, then your good days are over. She clearly wanted me to get rid of Serafina for her. Just then, William and Serafina walked in, holding hands. It seemed he had managed to explain things. He shot me a look of pure hatred. She, on the other hand, deliberately showed off the love bites on her neck. I was feeling unwell last night, so the young master stayed to take care of me. You don't mind, do you, sister? Of course not, I said with a gracious smile, and presented the other ginseng to her. I was just thinking that at your age, after a night of passion, you must be in need of some nourishment. This should help you conceive a child soon. After all, you are not getting any younger. Her face turned black. She wanted the ginseng, but she couldn't stand my words. The old princess was also displeased that I had given away the other one. Husband, I said, turning to him. It is time for us to pay our respects to my family. I am not going, he said. You can choose not to go, but if anyone asks about last night, I am afraid I might misspeak. His mother ordered him to go. He left in a huff, and I had to run to keep up. At the gate, he grabbed my arm. You'd better behave. If I find out you've been mistreating Serafina, I will not spare you. You are mistaken, my lord, I said, and with a sudden twist, dislocated his wrist. The one I want to mistreat is you, he screamed in pain. The commotion drew a crowd. Husband, what are you talking about? How have I hurt you? I cried, as if he had just attacked me. The household physician was summoned. He examined William's wrist and found nothing wrong. I had already popped it back into place. You are lying again, I sobbed. First my jaw, now my wrist. Why do you hate me so much? What do you want? He whispered. Simple. I want you to go to my father and stepmother and demand the return of my mother's dowry. No one refuses a man with a lot of money. He agreed. My stepmother and two half-sisters had taken everything from me, but the two most valuable items, the two ginsengs, she hadn't been able to steal, so she had soaked them in a slow-acting poison. I had known and had replaced it with a fast-acting one. Just as he was demanding the return of my dowry, a servant rushed in. My lord, the old princess and the noble concubine have been poisoned. It seems it was the ginseng the young mistress gave them. The magistrate was called with the evidence I had planted. My stepmother was quickly arrested. The old princess and Serafina had only touched the ginseng, not eaten it, so they recovered. But they were furious and demanded she be executed for murder. The scandal was the talk of the town. My father's reputation was ruined. William, seeing a chance to further humiliate my family, had his servants go and retrieve every last item of my dowry. My father, who had built his career on my mother's money, was now left with nothing. He had abandoned her for a younger woman, had even caused her death. Now he had to choose between his new love and his career. He chose his career. He threw his new wife under the bus, but it was too late. The emperor was disgusted with him and banished him to a remote province. I packed him 2 cartloads of supplies, all the useless broken things my stepmother had tried to pass off as my dowry. I heard that when he arrived and saw what was inside, he had coughed up blood and had taken to his bed. The household was in chaos, but the prince's residence was just as lively. With the help of some well-placed bribes, I was kept informed of everything. William, seeing my power, was afraid to cross me. Serafina, however, was not so easily subdued. She was desperate to have a child. She tried everything, but nothing worked. She grew more and more irritable, constantly picking fights with me. I, of course, was a helpless victim. She even tried to poison me, but the poisoned pastry ended up in her own mouth. She was getting desperate. A maid gave her an idea. The young master was known to have a preference for men. Perhaps he was unable to father a child. Her only hope was to get pregnant by another man. She arranged for a strong young man from one of the family's estates to be brought to her. But the walls have ears, and I have a lot of money. The news reached William just as they were in the act. He was furious. "I have been so good to you. Why would you betray me?" "Good to me," she had shrieked, all pretense gone. "You promised to make me your wife. I have waited for years, watching you marry one woman after another, take one concubine after another. You are the one who betrayed me." She didn't love him. She had only ever loved his title, or perhaps she had once loved him. But years of disappointment had twisted her heart. A noble concubine who committed adultery was to be drowned in a pig cage. I, citing her years of service, requested a cup of the strongest poison for her instead. A quick, painless death. "I lost to you in the end," she had said, a look of resignation in her eyes. "You didn't lose to me," I replied. "You lost to your own greed." After she was gone, he fell into a deep depression. His mother, seeing her chance, took back control of the household. "Don't think I don't know who was behind her idea of getting pregnant by another man," she had warned me. "You'd better watch yourself. She wanted to use me to get rid of Serafina, then get rid of me. How naive. Me intuition told me that she was not his real mother." I did some digging. The old prince, William's father, had been adopted by the late emperor, who was childless at the time. But then the emperor had a son of his own, and the old prince had been sent away. The son had died, and the old prince had been brought back, only for the new empress to become pregnant again. The old prince had been sent to the battlefield, where he had died. His wife, the old princess, had given birth to William on the same day. But the truth was, her own child had been stillborn. To secure her position, she had forced a concubine to give birth prematurely. Then had the concubine and her alleged lover, a steward, killed, claiming the child was a bastard. I had the evidence leaked to William. On his mother's birthday, in a drunken, grief-stricken rage, he strangled her. Patricide is an unforgivable crime. The truth came out. The emperor, taking pity on him, spared him the death penalty and offered him a cup of poisoned wine instead. The prince's residence was mine. I was the youngest, highest-ranking widow in the capital. I told the Empress Dowager that I was so lonely I was going to hang myself. She, annoyed, had a baby boy from a distant relative, the son of a maid who had died in childbirth, adopted by me. "My lady," Linger asked me one day, "why don't you have a child of your own?" "The emperor would never allow William to have an heir," I said. "He was probably sterilized long ago." I knew that William couldn't have children. If I had tried to pass off another man's child as his, I would have been exposed. My weak and helpless persona had to be maintained. "Mommy, I want a fruit." My adopted son, now 2, came running to me. I picked him up and swung him in the air. "All right, let's go and get some fruit."